Welcome to episode 11 of the Dynasty Dreamerz podcast. I'm your host, Joe Galloway. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Luigi Federico.
Good evening, everyone.
And a returning Ryan Nunn.
Glad to be back.
Collectively, we are the Dynasty Dreamerz. We go to bed thinking about Dynasty. We dream about Dynasty. We wake up thinking about Dynasty. You get the picture. Ladies and gentlemen, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Twitter, in addition to YouTube. We have a guest on today's show, a friend of ours, Jorge Taylor.
Hello.
Will be joining us. On today's show, the four of us will be discussing a startup draft that we are currently involved in. We will be analyzing every pick and every trade, and boy, were there a lot of trades. This is going to be a multi-part episode as we want to cover up until the end of the 12th round if possible. This is a 12-team, tight end premium, start 12 startup draft. This is a Marvel versus DC theme league, so all the teams will be named after Marvel or DC characters just so everybody can keep up. So let's get into this, shall we? So we had our first minor surprise at the very first pick, the 101 of the draft.
Wasn't a surprise for me.
When Team Magneto selected Josh Allen. I've said this on the show before, several episodes ago, that I will never, ever, until further notice, consider taking anyone over Patrick Mahomes in a startup draft at this position. Luigi has stated his opposition to this claim on multiple occasions. So, Luigi, give us a brief rundown of what you've told us in the past.
Well, so he posted in the chat. He was like, "Oh, I'm on the clock at 101. What players should I be taking?" And I said, "Oh, you should take Josh Allen." Just kind of joking around because I honestly don't believe that's like the common pick at the 101. Everybody normally takes Patrick Mahomes. So I was just joking around, and then I see that he took him, and I'm like, oh, wow, maybe somebody finally agrees with me that Josh Allen's at the 101.
Ryan, you're in agreement with me on Patrick Mahomes should be the 101, correct?
I mean, I love Josh Allen, but you can't take that guy over Patrick Mahomes.
And Jorge, you specifically benefited from this. How did you feel about the pick?
Well, it was the fastest pick of my whole draft, the second pick of the draft, because I was ecstatic.
It says 1 minute later elapsed.
I was messaging Joe. I was like, I really like the how this is going. He's talking about taking Josh Allen. I'm going to get Patrick Mahomes at 102. No, I think it's unconscionable to take Josh Allen. One of these guys is Patrick Mahomes. The other guys are other quarterbacks not named Patrick Mahomes.
I wasn't going to comment on this, but unconscionable I think is too strong because he's definitely not the only person that has that opinion, as Luigi shares that opinion with him. And even if you look at trade calculators, they're right there. They're within a point or so. But I agree with you. It should have been Patrick Mahomes.
Sorry, I'm one of those people. Like I said, that I love Allen, and I can see Luigi's side. But the security of having Mahomes is just an overwhelming advantage. Like Josh Allen's eventually going to get hurt doing what he does, and it's going to shorten his career. Where I think his upside is much greater. On the short term, his longevity is not near.
I totally disagree with his ceiling. There's going to be a guy in this league that's eventually going to throw the ball for 6,000 yards and 60 touchdowns. And the most likely person to be now is Patrick
Joe Burrow.
Mahomes. But it could be Joe Burrow, but it could be Josh Allen.
So we obviously have spoiled the 102 here, but just so everybody knows, Team Nightwing, who is Jorge Taylor, selected Patrick Mahomes with the 102. I don't think we really need to comment anymore on this. We kind of talked about it.
I think we're good here. These guys, these two are just clearly the top two guys, and there's no real question about that.
So moving on to the 103, Team Vision selected Jalen Hurts, quarterback from the Eagles. I personally have Burrow ahead of Jalen Hurts, but most ADPs have Hurts slightly above Burrow.
If you look at the ADP of Jalen Hurts 2 years ago, this is insane that he is there being taken at the 103, but I don't disagree with it. We talk about Josh Allen potentially having that high ceiling. I think Jalen Hurts is right there up along with it. And honestly, I would take Joe Burrow at the 103 personally, but this is not out of the ordinary in my opinion.
Jalen Hurts is chalk to me. I love Burrow, but his upside is not near what Jalen Hurts is.
I think Jalen Hurts is kind of like the year after Lamar Jackson's MVP season. He was much higher than he is now. I think we're seeing, and I cannot see Jalen Hurts play any better than he did last year, ever. I think that's about as good as you're going to see a quarterback play.
But if he plays that well, then he deserves the position he's in.
But Burrow could be better than that, though.
I don't think so. Not when you're talking about fantasy, and his legs add a whole nother element to his upside.
I think that the reason for me to take Burrow over Hurts is because I expect him to be better longer.
Yeah, the longevity.
Totally agree.
The longevity is definitely the way you can put that. That's Burrow's biggest asset. That and the fact that even though I love AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, they're not Jamar Chase.
Okay, well, moving on, and we have our first trade of the draft. Tyler McPherson, a friend of the shows who we've talked about before, is also in this draft. He is Team Flash. He made this team with trade with Team Nightcrawler, which is our very own Ryan Nunn. And he sent the 104, Ryan did, to Tyler for the 109 and the 604. Since this is your trade, Ryan, I'm going to let you comment on this first. What were you thinking? What did you like? What are the possible pitfalls of doing something like this?
So here I am at the 104, staring down the option of getting to take Joe Burrow. I'm a quarterback truther, and it would be real easy just to slam that guy. But I have guys that I like later in the round that most people don't like as much. And I'm always looking to pick up value.
That's an understatement, by the way. A lot less than I do.
Well, I mean, he's better than your franchise quarterback. So
we'll get to him later. Let's keep going on the trade.
But being able to pick up a 6th-round startup and start accumulating assets is how I want to start every draft. So moving from the 104 to the 109, still being in a tier with quarterbacks that I like, and picking up an extra startup pick, exactly how I want to start a draft.
As much as I like Joe Burrow more than the guys that Ryan is high on, I still think that this is a really good value. Like I think getting a 6th-round startup is just great.
Yeah, to touch on your point, I think that's the reason why Ryan did it, and that's the reason why Tyler was able to make the pick, is because he knew he was sending extra value in order to pick up Joe Burrow.
I understand why Ryan did it, because Ryan has a tier of 9, whereas 10, he's saying. I have a tier of 8. So for me, the 108 is the last pick I would have done this trade for. I actually would have rejected this trade if it had been sent to me for the 104. But I do understand why Ryan did it, because he's much higher on a certain player at 109 than I am. So just to recap, Team Flash did take Joe Burrow at the 104. So that's who he moved up for. And with the next pick at the 105, Team Galactus.
Oh, yeah, Galactus.
Took Justin Herbert. Don't think there's a whole lot to say here. I think this maybe is the first spot where you could consider Justin Jefferson, but ultimately I would have taken Justin Herbert here as well.
It's pretty chalk, I think.
Yeah. I'm not taking anybody besides maybe Trevor Lawrence over.
Yeah, I think Galactus saw the first 4 picks were quarterbacks, and he just decided he needed to take the second best. Yeah, he needed to take the best quarterback that was left on the board. Now, I don't have Herbert as the best quarterback on the board at that point, but it is considered chalk essentially for Herbert to be going there.
It can't fault the guy for taking Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we get to the pick 106, which was originally my pick, but I did make a trade. I sent the 106 and the 1407. My team is Dark Phoenix, by the way. So Team Dark Phoenix sent the 106 and the 1407 to Team Magneto. Remember, he was the guy that had the 101 and took Allen. For the 301, the 701, his 2024 first and his 2025 first. So what I was thinking with this trade was, at the very beginning of the draft, before the draft even started, I sent a message to him saying, hey, what would it take to move from the 206 to the 101? Just to get a feel for where he was at, where Team Magneto was at. he said, basically, I wouldn't really be wanting to do anything like that. You know, I value the high picks pretty much. He didn't say that exactly, but something to that effect. So my wheels got to spinning thinking, hey, maybe this is a place for me to go the other way and gain value. So about 15 minutes later, I messaged him and say, hey, what would you give me for the 106? And specifically, I said, let's start with your 2024 first and your 2025 first. What startup picks would you give me with those two picks to move to the 106? He came up with, I think, the 212 and the 612, which I was very happy to hear. But he also said, I want to wait till I'm on the clock, and it may not be exactly this trade. I may modify it a bit. So I waited till the 106 got on the clock, asked him if he was still interested. He was. And that's when we got to the trade that we currently have, which is a bit different than what we talked about at the beginning. I like this trade a lot for me because I was trying to gain value one way or the other, either by moving up or by moving back. I did pick up a couple of future firsts, which I liked. I do think that I gained the value in this trade, but as these guys are about to tell you, I don't think I gained the value by as much as they think. But we'll start with Jorge.
I like turning $5 bills into $10 bills too, so I can understand the value. I really do. I get it.
But see that, and that was said in group chat. That is just a complete exaggeration of the value difference in this trade. Because if it was double, then in fairness, I could have got the 301, the 302.
It was probably more about sending 750 for 10. To be honest, but again,
well, here, and I'll say it again before
it was great.
Before Luigi chimes in here, would anybody in this room do the 301, the 701, and the 2024 first for the 106? Would anybody take the 301 side of that?
No.
Any takers?
No.
Exactly. So how can you say that it was that far off when you wouldn't have done it without the 2025 first? Luigi.
I have Trevor Lawrence, like I actually was trying to say a little while ago, as the 105 in startup drafts. And personally, I think this is just a little bit more value that you got in return for him. I would say closer to more like the 701. And the 701 is quite a bit of value, but looking at the players who are there at the 701 who have been available around here, I mean, I'm not sure that the difference of value between taking the 701 and putting it in there is that much higher.
Luigi, I completely agree with you. You can make the argument that it's the 701 off. But as we've talked about this before, whenever you trade up to get one of those premium quarterbacks or even Justin Jefferson, you're going to have to pay more than what that guy's worth. You don't get even Trevor Lawrence. You don't get even Josh Allen. You're going to have to pay up.
This is a great way to start a draft, though, with the way we like to start our drafts. We're always trying to do a productive struggle type startup. Like, we're always trying to pick up and accumulate picks and stuff. Like, this is a great way. And if you can do that and accumulate these value early, you're setting the precedence that you're the guy that's wanting to buy the picks. It sets you up in a really good spot. Also, like, I have definitely paid that tax for a premier quarterback before, but it's not generally what I like to do. But if I'm going to be doing it, it's definitely going to be at the quarterback position.
Well, and I agree with you. And back whenever I was a Dynasty rookie, so-and-so, I'd say, I paid up like this to get a wide receiver. But you know what? I went undefeated and won a championship this year. There's nothing that says
that year.
That year, yeah. There's nothing that says that this can't work for Team Magneto. We don't think it's going to work for him. We can think that all we want to, but it's definitely worked for people before.
I mean, he's definitely got a great nucleus of Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence to start, and he's got his quarterback set for a good long while.
And that is the most important thing in Dynasty. We would all agree on that.
I think we should mention, though, this is a start 12 league, so that seventh round pick is more important. Because that guy's always going to be played. He's going to be one of your better players on your team.
It is only a slight difference, though. As someone who's done 10 and 12, I can tell you it's only a slight difference.
Generally, the the 7th round guy is not much different than the 12th round guy as far as production. It's value that you're losing.
Exactly.
Like you're looking at a Quentin Johnson against a DeAndre Hopkins at this point.
There will be veteran players in the 12th round that will
a Keenan Allen or someone like that
that are going to outscore a lot of the guys we take in the 7th round.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So moving on to pick 107, Team Batman took Lamar Jackson. I think that if I'm putting myself in his spot, I think what he's thinking here with this pick is, I don't want to leave the first round without a quarterback.
Because I may not get one. I may not get a premier one.
Yes.
With the way quarterbacks that are going off the board, it's scary. And if that's the guy he has as his number one quarterback, it's not mine. But it's I definitely don't blame him for slamming that guy and being happy with it.
I personally could not have taken Lamar Jackson over Justin Jefferson here, though. This is where I draw the line and say there's 6 quarterbacks I'll take over Jefferson. But after those 6, I'm definitely taking Jefferson.
Yeah, I'm on the same situation as you are. I don't know if I could pass up Jefferson or personally even Jamar Chase at this pick. And I would take my chances getting somebody like Justin Jefferson's quarterback in the 2nd round if that's what I needed to do. I would slam Justin Jefferson and then turn around and take Kirk Cousins in the 2nd round and be perfectly happy with it.
I actually have Lamar Jackson as my 7th overall startups. I actually have him ahead of Chase, so I don't think this is nearly as far off.
Do you have him ahead of Jefferson?
No, 8th. That's right, 8th. You're right.
Okay.
8th. I have him ahead of Chase. I don't have him ahead of Jefferson, but I can understand not wanting to have a middling quarterback, which is what's going to be left.
I have 7 quarterbacks ahead of Jefferson, but it's not this one, and we'll definitely come back to this because it is going to be a heated debate later on.
Now, we did have a trade that happened between the 7th and 8th. It does not involve the 108, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. Team Nightcrawler, which is Ryan again, traded the 109 to Team Magneto for the 212 and the 501. So remember, Team Magneto is a guy who's already taken Josh Allen and he's already taken Trevor Lawrence, and he's heading into the 109 where he's going to get another premier player. Ryan, give us the breakdown of what you were thinking here, why you decided to do this.
Same reason as the trade before. Move back, accumulate more picks, accumulate more value. That's all it is for me.
And to me, I know that you have a higher tier than me. The reason why I like this trade even more is because at 109, the tiers broke for me, and you're trading a 2nd tier guy for a 2nd and a round and the 5th round startup. I loved this trade for you, probably even more than you did.
You said that the tier breaks. Does that mean that you have the player that he took in the 2nd tier, or just because?
Well, we didn't know who the player was going to be at this point in time.
Well, we knew it was going to be one of the 2.
Right, but the one
it ended up being he ended up in the same tier as the guy he took.
We knew it was going to be either Jefferson or the player that he took.
Well, that's because I made a mistake here. This trade actually happened before Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
So we did not know that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So we did not know that Jamar Chase was going to be at the 109 when he made this pick. So at the 108, Team Thor, who is my son, Bryce Galloway, who was on the show a couple episodes ago.
I'd say 3 episodes, yeah.
He's getting his feet wet, his first startup.
Yeah, had his first startup, and at the 108, he got a bit of a gift, in my opinion, and was able to take Justin Jefferson at that spot. So this is pretty simple, in my opinion. For most people, there aren't any quarterbacks that are worth more than Justin Jefferson left on the board. So you just take the best non-quarterback, and nobody, in my opinion, is the only guy that's even relatively close is Jamar Chase. So for me, this was easy.
I agree. Yeah, it was a slam draft on Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I think this was probably the 2nd easiest draft pick so far. Well, I have Mahomes did this, but
yeah.
So I think you just can't pass this guy.
I still have one quarterback that's ahead of him, but you can't go wrong starting your draft with Justin Jefferson. He's just really safe.
So then at the 109, Team Magneto, who remember has Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence already, took Jamar Chase, wide receiver. So he's off. Team Magneto here is off to a hot start, and this trade, in my opinion, actually ended up better for him. The trade he made with Ryan ended up better than it could have ended up. Because when he made the trade, if the next two picks had been Jefferson and Chase, then what does he do at
He stuck with
109?
Lamar Jackson.
I think his plan had to have been
It had to be Bijan.
Right.
right.
But to me, Jamar Chase is worth a lot more than Bijan.
Oh,
so
yes.
I'm sure at this point he was ecstatic that Jamar Chase fell. He had to be.
I know. I would have been happy with it if I.
Ryan, does this? I know this doesn't change the trade for you at all because you had another guy that's still left ahead of Chase.
Yeah,
So,
like I would.
Chase is your 10th, right?
Yes, and I honestly would not the pick that I traded back up into for the 10th.
Yeah, we're getting to that in a second.
Yeah.
So we're pretty much agree on that. So then there was a trade prior to the 110, as Ryan just alluded to. He traded his 212 and the 604 for the 110. So Ryan, you traded back from the 109 when you probably would have thought that guy would have been there, the guy you ended up taking here. And I know that you essentially moved up from the 604 to the 509 when you made this trade. But you didn't know that when you made it, so I'm just curious as to what the thinking was here.
Well, actually, I knew that Magneto wasn't taking another quarterback, so trading him the 109 was free value.
But how did you know that you were going to be able to trade
He didn't know
up to
that.
the 110?
Well, he did.
It was a calculated.
The Jackson pick was off the clock at this point. I will say that. So he probably. I guess what Ryan's saying is he knew that Chase was going to be the pick.
Yes, I knew I could trade out of that, and then yes, it was calculated that I was going to be able to move back up and get my guy, but it ended up working out that I ended up getting a fifth. Like I ended up getting the guy that I wanted to in the first round.
Moved up around from the 6th to the 5th.
Yes, yeah. It ended up working beautifully for me.
So he is right on the timeline because when the 107 went on the clock. But no, that's not right, Ron. No, because if the 107 hadn't taken Lamar, if he had went Jefferson, the 108 went Chase.
He said it could have been Bijan at the 109 though, and it still would have had.
That's true. It probably would have been Bijan.
And let's be honest, the guy that Ryan's going to pick here, that we all know he's going to pick, and we'll get to in a second, was going to be there at the 111, and we would probably be there at the 111.
But you're wrong about that, Jorge, because more people. We all disagree with Ryan's evaluation of Justin Fields, but most people are closer to Ryan than we are. They just are.
I'm even a step above because I have him equal to Trevor Lawrence, but yes, most people do have him there. So I got to leave the first round, getting the guy that I wanted, and picking up a 5th round startup. I'm ecstatic to be where I'm at.
Well, let's just announce the pick, and then Ryan, you can talk about the player and get past the trade a little bit. So after he moved up, made the trade and moved up back to the 110. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this. He made that trade with Team Bain, which is, and Peter, I hope I don't butcher this. I think it's Peter Chignoma. Is that how?
Chigoma.
Peter Chigoma, who I have talked with pretty extensively in the off season, controls Team Bain, and he's the one that made that trade with Ryan. So with the 110, Team Nightcrawler Ryan selected Justin Fields.
I know this is a very controversial thought, and as far as me having him with Trevor Lawrence, but Fields just has that upside, and with the addition of DJ Moore. And the fact that they finally, after the first half of the season, let him run the ball and show how electric he is with the ball in his hand, I just think with his upside as a dynasty asset, maybe not as a real quarterback, but as a dynasty asset, is enough to where I'll put him with Trevor Lawrence, and he's going to keep a job. Guys like Michael Vick stay in the league for a long time, and he is that type player.
Jorge, Luigi, one of you want to chime in on this, and it'll kind of be the rebuttal for the three of us.
So I think that Michael Vick was a generational talent. We have seen plenty of players like Justin Fields that basically blew out their first time and just never showed back up again. RG3 was a player. I know there was an injury involved, but he never got another shot, basically. He had that 1 year. He was great. He got hurt. It was done. I think if Justin Fields gets hurt, it'll be the same thing that happens. It was running quarterbacks, they get hurt. I think the odds of him being a starting quarterback in the next 3 to 4 years is much lower than pretty much any other player in the first 3 rounds.
Except for Tua.
Except for Tua.
Yeah.
Tua's the injury's known, though.
I think that the only thing that I would add to that, Jorge, is that for me, I haven't seen any indication from Justin Fields that he can throw the football in this league. I know his targets have been bad. He doesn't have anybody to throw to.
That is an understatement.
I get all that, but watching that guy play football, watching him throw the ball and try to throw the ball into a tight window, or even just a slightly tight window, he ain't got it, man. That's my opinion.
He's not going to have to throw the ball in as many tight windows because of he's not going to have as much coverage because they're going to have to put a guy on him.
But they had guys on him all season, and he couldn't fit it into a tight window,
or even a remotely tight window. Yeah.
So
he made some really nice throws in tight windows.
So I'm a huge Patriots fan, as everybody knows. That Patriots game, he could not complete a pass, but all he did was run the ball. I get that, but the Patriots tried their best to take the passing game out. They didn't try to take him out of the running game. They thought they could beat the Bears by keeping Justin Fields running the ball. And it didn't work out that particular game. But
right, because you have Mac Jones throwing the ball on the other side, and that's a dumpster fire.
Wait. We're not talking about Mac Jones right now. We're talking about Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Justin Fields couldn't complete a pass, and the Patriots allowed him to run the ball thinking that they could beat them. And it worked for a lot of teams. A lot of teams allowed Justin Fields to run the ball, and they smoked the Bears. I don't necessarily agree with Jorge and Joe. I do think he has a higher upside than they're willing to admit. But I do agree to an extent that he very well may not be a starting quarterback in 3 years.
No,
if Justin Fields doesn't show promise this year, then I'll concede the fact that he's.
I can't believe that I'm having to say this to you, Luigi, after how many times we talked about it. It's not Justin Fields' ceiling that I have a problem with.
Passing ceiling, I mean.
His passing ceiling. Okay,
that's what I meant.
Okay,
I didn't mean for fantasy purposes. I meant passing.
That's fair. Yes, his passing ceiling is not very high in my opinion.
Davis Mills was pretty much the worst quarterback in football last year and had 3,300 yards.
Don't do this, Jorge.
I'm just saying.
We don't want to get too far down.
But I'm just saying, if you only throw for 2,200 yards in the NFL, you're not going to be a starting quarterback for very long.
For somebody who's
a lot more.
You have to look at the game script though. Like he wasn't throwing the ball.
There's no game script in the NFL for a quarterback to throw for 120 yards in a game. That's not a game script.
That's a good point.
They were down a lot though, Ryan. The game script should
he
have
was running for his life.
But the game script should have been, I need to pass the ball in order to win these games. But he couldn't do it.
When you have Joe Bob to throw the ball to, there's nobody getting open.
But you're over here.
There's nobody. We have to make every throw into a short.
That Mahomes guy had Joe Bob and Joe Bob's cousin all year long.
Let's be perfectly honest. He also had Travis Kelce, possibly the greatest tight end of all time.
Yeah.
You were over here
just for 3,000 more yards.
You were just over here talking about Mac Jones not being
Travis Kelce's for 3,000.
You were just over here not talking about Mac Jones not being able to complete a pass, but they had worse weapons. Mac Jones had worse weapons.
Mac Jones come on, Luigi.
Yes, he did. Going into the season last year, the Patriots were ranked the worst receiving core in the league.
Guys, we're going too far here. If we're going to argue about who had worse,
who's worse, Jacoby Meyer and Darnell Mooney.
All I'm saying is you can't have it both ways. If one guy is not good because of his weapons, but the other guy is not good even though he has worse weapons and he can't pass the ball, then you need to find some medium ground.
But one's known as a running quarterback and one's supposed to be a throwing quarterback, and they're pretty much equal at throwing, and one has the rushing upside.
They're not equal at throwing. Right?
I don't think anyone's comparing Mac Jones to
I wasn't trying to compare it. I was just saying your statement.
But they're not equal throwers either. To be fair, that's
we're off the rails here. We're going to move on to pick 111. So with the 111 team reverse flash, let's just comment on that for a second. Who the hell chooses the reverse flash? Was this not the wildest character pick?
Well, so it was funny because full disclosure to anyone listening, the way I divided up the teams was I set up the 4 divisions and I let people choose what division they wanted to be in. He was the last person to choose his team name. In other words, he was the last person to choose his division, and it was the DC Villains division. And he didn't come up with anybody better than Reverse Flash.
It just tells you shallow the DC universe is.
Well, in his defense, we do have Bane.
DC isn't.
Well, we said
Marvel.
Ra's al Ghul and Mr. Freeze are on the board here, and he shows
Ra's al Ghul is on the board. I mean,
He's such a first
I bet half of our listeners don't know who the hell Ra's al Ghul is.
He was a main character in two of the.
Yeah, we're
the
getting.
two Nolan movies.
We gotta have a whole different podcast about this. So we'll just move on to Reverse Flash's pick.
There's like 70 Marvel villains are better.
We'll move on to Reverse Flash's pick here, which was Bijan Robinson. And we've talked about Bijan probably more than anybody this offseason. When you agree with that, Luigi?
Yes.
And you guys all know, I understand that this is where he's being ADPing. So as far as the consensus is concerned, this was a perfectly reasonable pick. But for me, this is just way too early for a running back. I never want to start my dynasty team with a running back in the first round.
So my thoughts on this pick is, while I agree with you, I see where he was going with it. He wants to start off with the best available player left in the first round. And honestly, by ADP, he is right by taking him in the first round.
Yeah, but
my only problem with it, honestly, is who he got at his next pick, which we will go into.
I will never pick Bijan Robinson at the 111. I will trade the pick.
So you'll never have Bijan
Is
Robinson.
it a Bijan Robinson problem or just drafting a running back in the first round?
I'm never going to draft a rookie running back that's never played in the NFL 111. I will trade the pick. I will get a Tua later on in the next round back. I'll do something. I will never have it.
To me, this is just more about roster construction. Like, I'm never starting a roster with a running back. Like,
Especially not a rookie running back.
The rookie doesn't bother me. Like,
doesn't mean
like Saquon Barkley was a perfect
Yeah.
example of a rookie running back that went in the first round. I'm not going to do it.
First one off the board, actually, not
Yes.
even just first round.
Yes,
Yeah.
like he went in, he was going above quarterbacks.
Complete
Obviously now the Superflex has changed and people realize the value of quarterbacks now. Man, the good old days whenever you could get all the value.
But was Barkley the last rookie running back that actually ended up being the best running back in their class?
Well, the first one that came in as the consensus running back one, correct. But I'm gonna be honest
Jonathan
with you.
Taylor came in as the consensus running back run.
He didn't. No, he
no,
was
he didn't.
not.
CMC
McCaffrey was ahead of. There were several guys ahead of Jonathan.
Oh, I thought you were talking about in his class.
No.
I apologize.
Like when he came
Okay.
out, he was the consensus 101 running back.
Okay. I thought you were talking about in his class.
No,
But
like
I'm agreeing in agreement with Ryan completely here. If I'm taking a running back and there's not a running back on the board, it's Bijan. He is the running back one. For me.
you clearly if you're taking that position, that is the best
it's
guy.
just a question of just not taking a running back in the first round for me.
Like, I would rather reach for a quarterback and lose a little value than to take lose a little short term value and gain the long term value than to trade to take a running back and get 3 to 5 years of production, knowing that guy's going to fall off the cliff.
Also, I think this is a pick that makes a lot more sense than the 101 of a rookie draft because you already know what your team is. Because you're going for a win-now team. Right here, you have no idea what your team is. You just have Bijan Robinson on your team, and you now have to win now without a quarterback. That's a tough spot to be in.
If you have gained the 101 though, like I want to trade that 101 for value. Pick up a quarterback and
No,
other
but
assets.
only if your team is a win-now team. You can trade for the value. That
But
makes sense.
you're likely not going to have the 101 unless.
But you trade it to somebody else for the value to get your guy
Yeah.
and win now.
Well, let's move on to the 112 and the 201, and that was the wheel, and there wasn't a trade there. And we're just going to go ahead and let Luigi tell us about the 112, which was Deshaun Watson. Technically, it was Dak Prescott, but if Luigi had taken them in the right order, he would have went Watson at 111 or 112 and Prescott at 201. Correct, Luigi?
Yeah, I was just doing it to mess with ADP. So, like I said, I was just messing with ADP whenever I took Dak over Watson, but
I thought it was alphabetical order, to be honest.
but I knew that those were the two players I was taking the moment that I went on the clock. I just don't think that there's anybody else that I would rather have over them, especially considering it's the wheel. And I knew I wasn't going to get back on the clock at least until the 312. I wasn't willing to leave there without taking two quarterbacks. That's just how I like to build my teams, is keeping my quarterbacks being elite and then trying to build up from other positions. Unless I'm going like extremely win now, and then I could see myself having taken somebody like CeeDee Lamb and Deshaun Watson there.
Dak's not the guy that I would have taken there. Maybe if you're trying to win now, but I have Dak much lower in my rankings than most people.
I have Dak in my top 10 quarterbacks for fantasy.
He's my QB9.
Yeah, so
I'm taking Kyler. I'm taking Richardson. I'm taking Bryce Young. I'm taking quite a few guys. Like he's currently my QB 14.
Well, I don't have my rankings from me. I think he's around my 12-ish, but I liked this when Luigi did it because I thought he's heading in a clear win now direction, and that seemed, even though there's guys I have ahead of Dak Prescott, like Bryce Young, like Ryan mentioned, Prescott just makes so much more sense on a win now team, and I thought that was the direction that Luigi was headed in, but oh boy, was I wrong, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But
dun dun dun.
at the time he made these picks, it made complete and total sense to me.
Well, like I said, I'm a lot of taking the best player on the board, and I do have Dak in my top 10 quarterbacks for fantasy. So I wasn't gonna take somebody else over him. And I honestly, at this time, I wasn't 100% sure of the direction I was gonna go. There are some trades here that we'll talk about here shortly that'll pretty well tell you the direction, but I felt like taking Dak and Watson, I could still go either way. And if you take somebody like Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young, I feel like it's harder to be a win now team taking one of those two guys.
Dak is much safer. Like, probably two of the rookie quarterbacks are going to be busts. There's a good shot at that. Maybe it's just one, but one of them will be a bust. Like, that's just.
Are you talking about between the big three?
The big three. One of them is probably going to be a bust, possibly even two. But one of them is, by stats, is going to be a bust. Dak is not a bust. Dak is the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. He has plenty of weapons. He's always going to have plenty of weapons.
They added
like
Cooks
this.
in the offseason.
I do like this pick. I actually have him ahead of Fields still, just because I do believe that he is the starting quarterback.
So do I, but that has more to do with how low I'm on Fields.
Sure, but
Yeah.
I really do believe this is a guy. He's a starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. I think he's going to be good. That position has always been good for the past 15 years ever since we started playing any type of fantasy. Tony Romo, Dak have always been a great player.
Even Cooper Rush did really well.
I ended up getting a guy in late seconds that I have ranked above him. So I was ecstatic to get that.
But we'll talk about that later too.
Okay, well, so we're going to move on to pick 202. This was also a pick of Reverse Splashes, who in the first round took Bijan Robinson, and at the 202 he took Anthony Richardson. This was okay. We're going to say the same thing about Bijan. None of us may agree with this pick, and everybody's going to jump in here in a second. They're all chomping at the bit to speak after me. But if we're looking at ADP, this is very close to where they have Anthony Richardson. Now, me personally, I would never take Anthony Richardson this early. I have Bryce Young and CJ Stroud both ahead of him. I have several other quarterbacks that haven't been selected ahead of him. So with that being said, I'm going to go alphabetically. Jorge, you get to speak next.
Okay, it has nothing to do with Anthony Richardson. I know his ADP is there. You took a running back before this, Bijan Robinson. Now you're going with a quarterback who I'm almost positive will not be good this year. He has to have a year or two. Lamar Jackson wasn't good the first year. Jalen Hurts wasn't good the first year. Justin Fields wasn't good the first year. Nobody with this skill set has ever been good the first year. So why would you take him after you just took a running back?
You're right and you're wrong. No one's ever been good in an NFL quarterback with this skill set in the first year, but we have had examples of guys who were good as fantasy players.
Fantasy production. All of the running quarterbacks are generally.
But Jalen Hurts wasn't good that year.
He was.
The first year he played, he was very good in fantasy.
Yeah, he was terrible.
He played 8 games that last season. It was
bad. No, he was not. You're absolutely
not fantasy wise. He was
not
productive.
from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, I agree with Jorge where he said you took Anthony Richardson when you just took Bijan. It's not about Anthony Richardson necessarily. It's just about the fact that you take Bijan Robinson in the first round, that is immediately putting your team in a win now direction. And then you turn around, you take Anthony Richardson, and I know what you're about to say, and I know that he's a rookie running back, but still, you took a running back in the first round. You're headed in a win now
I'm not
direction.
going to say it. I'm going to let Ryan speak first, and then I'm going to say it.
It kind of looks like to me that it was someone who in his rookie drafts didn't have enough rookie picks that had rookie fever and decided that that's what they want.
I think that's unfair, Ryan, and you're the one of the four of us should agree with this pick more than the rest.
I love the upside of Richardson
because
like I have him above Dak. Like I would rather have him than Dak.
As a believer in Justin Fields,
yeah, I agree.
What he is thinking here is that Richardson is going to have enough rushing upside that he's going to be okay even in a win now scenario.
I get the hope that he turns into somebody like Justin Fields, or a lot of people compared him to, I don't want to say a more inaccurate Deshaun Watson, but it's more to me about selecting a guy that you have that nobody has any necessarily good faith in because he's never played a down in the NFL. This is a quarterback. Whenever you take a rookie quarterback at the 202 after you've taken a running back in the first round, you're risking a lot, in my opinion, because you don't know how that rookie quarterback is going to turn out. And you just wasted 1 to 2 years of your rookie running back. And running backs don't have that great a shelf life. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I've got Bijan for 5 years, you take a rookie quarterback and he busts, then you're out Bijan Robinson for the first two or 3 years. You now have to turn around and look at trading Bijan Robinson.
You kind of wasted a couple of years of his career. But obviously, Reverse Flash has a lot of faith in Anthony Richardson.
But we just agreed that one of these quarterbacks is probably going to be a bust. And I think most of us would probably agree this is probably maybe the guy.
Well, like most of us, but the Dynasty community as a whole does not agree with that word. Believe me.
They're all about the upside. It has something to do with what these guys. They all know one of these guys is going to bust. One of the guys is going to be terrible. It's just how it's been forever. And
they're weighing the possibility of him being terrible versus his upside.
And the guy who threw for 53% completion in college is probably the most likely one to be the bust.
Anthony Richardson, though, and he's my third of these three guys. These were three rookies. He's the one guy who can be terrible and still score you some fancy points.
Yeah, and he's going to get the opportunity all the way through his rookie deal. So he's not. They're not moving off of him from what
he's got 4 years.
Yeah, he's got 5. Probably.
This is the team that's had 8 starting quarterbacks in 8 years. I don't know if you say he's good.
A bit of an exaggeration, but sure.
No, that's not an exaggeration.
8
quarterbacks in 8 years. Yeah.
Luck. Then he got hurt. It was another guy. The Luck came back.
Luck hasn't been gone for 7 years.
He wasn't gone, but he was hurt. He played, then he was hurt, and then he played again.
And then after that, it's 5 consecutive starting quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You had, what was your?
That's what you get for trading for washed up assets, hoping to put a band-aid on a gushing wound.
So I don't know.
All of a sudden, Wentz is washed up.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think it's infinite time for him. I think he has to be. I think if he's bad the first 2 years, or say we'll move on.
Well, Wentz played well for them, and they just decided to move off of him.
So we're going to move on to the 203, which is Team Bain, his first pick here that he's making a selection for, and he took CeeDee Lamb. So this seems right to me. You could argue a couple of quarterbacks, and in a startup, I probably would have taken Bryce Young over CeeDee Lamb to start a team with. But I can't argue with CeeDee Lamb here. I think it's a perfectly reasonable pick.
Oh, it's a good pick. Like if you're going to take a wideout, CeeDee Lamb's the guy you're going to take. And personally, I'm still pounding the quarterbacks at this spot.
He's still the most consistent player on the board. He's the most consistent elite talent on the board at this point in time. He's going to do what he's going to do.
He's the safest, but I'm going to take Bryce Young. I'm going to take Kyler. I'm going to take Tua. There's a lot of guys that I'm going to take there.
Yeah, I think taking a quarterback here, I think that quarterback, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, those two guys are the only 2 players, in my opinion, left on the board that can gain more value. They could go up higher to like the end of the first round. And I don't necessarily see CeeDee Lamb gaining enough value to be able to go up to the end of the first round.
No,
but I will say this. As much as I love Tua and Bryce Young and Kyler, they all 3 they're volatile. Like their dynasty value is volatile. Like it could go up or down.
And to what you just said, he can't get in the first round. He can't go to the third round either. And those other 3 quarterbacks could. If they go out this year are awful, There'll be a third round starter pick next year.
It's hard to imagine a scenario where Lamb's not still an early second round pick next year.
Yeah.
Lamb probably has the most insulated value of of those three quarterbacks in him.
So it seems like forever, but it's really only been about 6 picks. But we finally have another trade here. At the 204, Bain, Peter, that just made the CeeDee Lamb pick, decided to move up to take a guy right behind him. He sent the 212 and the 510 for the 204 and the 709. Before we announce who Peter took here, guys, let's just talk about this trade. For me, if you have enough conviction about a guy to move up 8 spots from the 212 to the 204, I think moving back 2 rounds from the 510 to the 709 makes complete and perfect sense here.
Yeah, and knowing a little bit about Peter, I know very well that he actually has Garrett Wilson as his wide receiver 4. So for him to move up to get Garrett Wilson, I think he feels like this is a steal. I personally think it was a little bit of an overpay, personally, but like I said, knowing that Peter absolutely loves him, I think it was a good
Well,
choice.
we said we weren't going to talk about the player yet, but so Luigi spoiled a little bit. But go ahead, guys.
My apologies.
And honestly, 510 to the 709, that's kind of the same tier. Like the guys are, they're very similar.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I don't think the guy at 202 is the same as, or 204 is the same as the guy at 212 either. So
that's fair.
So even though Luigi spoiled it, at the 204, Bain took Garrett Wilson after the trade. Now, Peter and I have talked extensively in Zoom chats with a group of people this offseason, and I knew that he was super high on Garrett Wilson. So I came into this draft thinking, I'm also high on Garrett Wilson, not nearly as high as him, thinking I'm not going to get Garrett Wilson. For me personally, I, first of all, wouldn't have traded up to get here. And secondly, I would have had to have taken a quarterback over Garrett Wilson. I understood CeeDee Lamb over all the quarterbacks. I do not understand Garrett Wilson.
No, I totally agree. You can't move up and have your next pick be at the 310 and have 2 wide receivers on your roster and no quarterback. Like, you have to take a quarterback. If you move it up to this pick, just keep your pick. I think there's a chance that Garrett Wilson may have still been there. The 2 young quarterbacks are still there. There is still Kyler. There's Tua. There's A.J. Brown. There's Amon-Ra. There's plenty of guys that are very good that I have equal to Garrett Wilson. They could have had his normal pick.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there have been 11 quarterbacks taken off the board up to that point. It's getting to the point to where it's getting super bleak. He is not going to have a quarterback 1, and maybe not even he'd go as far as a middle QB 2 by the time his next pick comes around.
I think that Jorge touched on something that I really hadn't tackled it. Even though I think the price he paid was fine, moving from the 510 to the 7 whatever it was. What are the chances that Garrett Wilson is just there at 212? I think it's reasonable. I think A.J. Brown certainly went ahead of him.
I mean, we'll get to it later, but Jalen Waddle was sitting there. Would you not just?
A lot of people have Wilson ahead of Waddle now.
But it's close, though.
But they're in the same tier. Like,
sure, but he obviously has.
He's got him in a much higher tier than Waddle.
I'm not trading up early in a draft if I'm not taking a quarterback. I'm just not doing it.
I agree with that, but everyone's got different philosophies.
If I'm losing value, I'm losing value for a guy that I know that I'm going to put on my roster for 6 to 10 years.
But and you will Garrett Wilson.
Yes, but it's a different kind of.
And the one way I'll tackle this to kind of like say that I like what Peter did in a way. I wouldn't have done it, but he did start off with CeeDee Lamb and Garrett Wilson. He started off with 2 of his top 5 wide receivers. And there's some value in that.
I mean, I have no problem with a guy trading up. It's just not personally the way that I'm going to attack a starter.
Right. So moving on to 205, Team Thor, which is again Bryce, added. He took Justin Jefferson in the first round, and he took Bryce Young with the 205 here.
He took his namesake.
Yeah. And, he and I talked about this a lot before he made the pick. And we're obviously Panthers fans, as we've discussed in the show before. But I try to get a point across to him that is very important in Dynasty. any fantasy football really, don't draft a guy because he's a Panther. It's never right to be a homer in fantasy football. Jorge could learn a lot by listening to this because in redraft he is a Jaguars fiend. But never, it's not correct to draft a guy because he plays for your team.
But there is no better feeling than getting your guy on your team at the right value. There is nothing better about it.
And I believe that this was the right value.
This is where he should have been at.
This is where I feel like Bryce Young should have been. I actually would have taken him ahead of Wilson and Richardson and even Rob, even Bijan and CD, just because of how much I value quarterbacks.
I have him in the same tier as Kyler, and I would if you have conviction and it's your guy, take your guy. Like fantasy football is supposed to be fun. And
I'd much rather root for Bryce Young as a Panthers fan than I would vote for Kyler Murray.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say.
Same guys are fine.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I mean, in redraft, Jorge would take the Jacksonville Jaguars kicker over CeeDee Lamb just so he could cheer for his kicker.
But yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Jorge. If you have three guys that you value at the exact same value,
absolutely,
and you're a Panthers fan, then you take the guy.
It should always be a tiebreaker.
Right. That's what I'm saying. If all three of them are the exact same value to you and you're like having to flip a coin, just choose the guy that's on your team.
Plus, on top of this, with taking Jefferson in the first round, he could have went any player here. He could go win later. He can go win now. At this point in time, by taking Bryce Young, he's probably veering more win now, but he's open. He can do whatever he wants going forward.
The only thing that I think he had to do, which is why I didn't agree with what Peter did, you have to come out of here with a quarterback.
Well, you don't have to. We feel like you do.
But in my personal, like, Bryce talked to both of us extensively about drafting, and
everyone in this group values quarterbacks to a high level. All four of us. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, talking to Peter, so does he. But I think that he feels like he's had a different startup experience than we have. In that, just from what I'm talking to him, he's been able to move up for these elite quarterbacks, the leagues he's been in, and not give up what he should have. Let's just put it that way. With the next pick, Team Batman at the 206, he already has Lamar Jackson on this team. He took Kyler Murray, and I think this is dead on. Add a young quarterback to your already existing young quarterback. This is not the quarterback I would have taken because I've got some questions about Kyler's work ethic and how much Arizona actually likes him. But I understand that a lot of people would have taken Kyler in this.
He is the best college player in the NFL.
Yeah, he definitely is. But
puts in the effort there.
But real quick for me, I love the pick. I love taking Kyler here. Guys,
the only thing I'll say with the fact that Kyler's not going to play for the first 8 games.
Well, that's not known yet for sure.
Like it's probably, but the reports are that he's not going to play for probably the first half of the season. And with the way that Arizona is dumping, it kind of limits his availability to being probably a win later piece, and it limits him from only being able to go win later at this point, where maybe another quarterback may not have.
Yeah, I honestly. Don't quote me on this because this is just my personal opinion. I think Kyler Murray doesn't play this year. So if you're looking at being a win now team, I don't like this pick. But personally, I think this is where he needs to go. So
I love the value.
I love the value.
I love the value.
Cardinal even at the end of this year.
I think he's a Cardinal. I just don't think he plays this year. I don't think
I would rather have Kyler on my roster than Dak Prescott.
The only way that I see him not being a Cardinal is if if the Cardinals end up with Caleb Williams. That is the only way that I don't see him being a Cardinal.
Ryan, if you're win now and Kyler or Dak are either your QB1 or your QB2, and you're really depending on them, and your team's great, you're telling me that you would rather have Kyler Murray right now than Dak Prescott?
If I'm trying to win,
so it's situational.
Yes, it is situational, okay. But value-wise, I have Kyler valued more than I do Dak.
That's fair. That's fair.
But if I'm trying to put points on the board this year, I'll take Dak and be okay.
But also Dak wasn't on the board, so it's a bit of a moot point. he's not. There.
Yeah, I'm just talking about it.
We'll talk about
I'm not
quarterbacks.
taking any other quarterbacks over Kyler. Like,
I'm taking one over Kyler if I am needing to put points on the board, but just one. There's just one that I would be willing to do that.
So at the 207, that brings Team Dark Phoenix up. That was me. Remember, I traded the 106 earlier for a bevy of startups and futures. So I did toy with trying to trade down a little bit with this pick. I wasn't super interested in doing it, but I always like to send offers this early in the draft. I don't usually ever make a pick without sending some offers, but nothing was really there. So what it came down to is obviously with that first trade, I'm trying to probably win later. That's probably my goal. So I want to get a quarterback. And for me, the top quarterback still on the board, without a shadow of a doubt, in my personal rankings, was the person I took at 207, which is C.J. Stroud. That's really it.
I really don't think there's a lot to talk about here either. I think the rest of these guys are there's just nobody here.
No,
if you win later, there's just nobody else here.
I mean,
I'm taking Tua over him as well. So
it went later.
Well, Tua was my next guy on the board, but I'm not taking Tua ever over.
Tua is the only guy that I would consider taking over Kyler if I'm a extreme win now team.
Yeah.
Win later, I can't.
Exactly.
We'll talk about that when Tua goes to the board.
Win later, I can't take anybody. I can't take
that
Stroud.
That is irresponsible to try to win later with take the ball.
I can't leave Stroud on the board being a winner.
I agree with that already.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think Tua gives you a lot more flexibility though. I think he can be a win later piece or a win now piece.
But at that point, I was already win later.
I think
if you want to take Stroud, like I have him in the same.
Yeah.
I actually have. I'm higher on Kyler. Like I have Kyler as my QB 12. So I mean not Kyler. Tua. I have Tua as my.
I have Tua as my QB 12.
Yeah.
I have Tua lower down the board, but for me, it was even though I have Stroud ahead of Tua in a vacuum, it was more about if I'm win later, there's just no question which one of the two of them I want.
I'm not gonna argue. I think it's fine.
If Stroud sucks, you're gonna have another early first round picks to draft later.
That's true.
Like if Stroud sucks, you're gonna have one.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're moving on to what is easily the most controversial pick of the draft. At the 208.
This is a startup draft, too.
It's not controversial.
This is not a rookie pick.
At the 208, the team that took Justin Herbert in the first round selected Dalton Kincaid. Now, I felt like going this draft that I would be the highest person in the entire draft on Dalton Kincaid. In my personal rankings, I have him in about the middle of the fourth round. And again, I thought I would be probably the highest person in the league.
He wasn't your tight end 1?
He was not my tight end 1, interestingly enough. He was my tight end 4, which I think most people would disagree with. But he was not my tight end 1. And this pick to me was very interesting. And I hate to say it, it was just a bad pick in my opinion. I don't want to elaborate on it much more than that. Everybody else, I'm sure, has something to say.
So I've done a lot of startup drafts in my dynasty career. I struggle to think of a pick that shocked me as much as this pick shocked me. I'm never one to say, oh, that was a terrible pick because of where you took the player. I've never one to say that. But this is the most borderline pick that I have ever seen that would make me say that, because the 208 for Dalton Kincaid in a startup draft, just especially considering there are 3 to 5 other tight ends that I personally have above him still left on the board for even win now or win later. It just shocked me, and I'm pretty sure it shocked everybody here at the table right now.
Let's not talk about tight ends. Like this guy was of AJ Brown. That is like. No, if you're not taking a quarterback, if you reach for a quarterback here, I'd understood it. Like there's people still there that's 5. You can't reach for Dalton Kincaid. Whenever there's guys that there's a very good chance that AJ Brown scores more points this year than Dalton Kincaid may score the next 5.
You can reach for Dalton Kincaid, just not at least 2 rounds too early.
So there's this guy named Kyle Pitts who is actually younger than Dalton Kincaid.
Is that confirmed, Luigi?
It is
Yes.
100% confirmed
Yes.
that he is younger than Dalton Kincaid that is still on the board.
Isn't Hawkinson like a year older? Than
Yeah,
Kincaid?
Hawkinson's only like a year older, if that.
Yes.
Hawkinson's 25.
I think Kincaid's
Dalton
like
Kincaid's like 24.
Kincaid is an old rookie.
he's a COVID rookie. He had some extra years there.
This might be just getting on the rookie fever just a little bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, just when you think about it from a rookie draft standpoint, he went ahead of Gibbs and JSN.
And
know,
in the tight end premium, I have seen him go as high as the 104. And I questioned it then, but at least in a rookie draft, taking him at the 104, like there are premium proven assets that are young, talented that you can take here that you know that are safe, that already have the upside you hope that you're getting out of Kincaid.
Yeah, I mean, this was the 105 technically of rookie picks, but it's not necessarily about that. It's about where he went ahead of other players like A.J. Brown's been stated, Jalen Waddle,
Amon-Ra,
Kyle Pitts,
Andrews,
T.J. Hawkinson.
Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey.
I mean,
Breece
you can
Hall,
go on and
Chris
on and
Olave,
on.
T. Higgins, Devontae Smith. Yeah,
there are
yeah.
there are 15 to 20 players that I feel like are more valuable than Dalton Kincaid. And again, get your guy. I'm 100%.
There's a 15 or 20 players
Well,
that are more
if
valuable in
he-
like 3 years than Dalton
I
Kincaid
think-
as they get older.
I
It's
think
not
the
even like-
biggest problem with the pick is if you're going to take Dalton Kincaid here, trade back. Trade back to the end of the third round for a rookie second. That guy's going to be there.
Yeah.
Get anything. Trade back.
Yeah.
Don't take a guy that is probably in most people's opinions probably about ADP like a 6th or 7th round guy. Don't take him in the second. It's just way too early.
You're high on a tight end 4, but I think
In the 4th round, yeah.
But the rest of us probably have him as a tight end 5 or 6.
I have him at 6.
Like that's
And like the thing is you can move back like 3 or 4 times, accumulate some value, and still get the guy you want.
And he could have moved back at least twice. So now we're moving on to the 209, and that brings Ryan back on the clock. Took Fields in the first round, and he added to the quarterback room here with Tua Tagovailoa. Ryan, take it away.
All right. Well, most generally, I like to start most of my drafts drafting quarterback. I just like to have that stability and knowing that my quarterbacks are set. I was very happy to get Tua here. I have him as my QB 12, and to be able to have 2 QB1s to start off a draft, plus have picked up on an extra rookie pick or startup pick, I'm extremely happy with this.
Nobody's a bigger person to hope that Tua is a great player in the league and will be great as a fantasy player. I just think
Than you.
Than me.
Yeah.
I love Tua. It's a great guy. I hate all the crap people talk about it. They're like, oh, he's a left-handed quarterback. Stop that. He can play football. I don't believe that Tua Tagovailoa is going to play more than like 20 or so more games of football. I think he's done. I think he should have retired at the end of last year. I think everybody in the NFL front office, everybody at the Miami Dolphins want him to retire because he may die on the field. I think he's eventually going to realize that. He has his buddy. He's lived the rest of his life a very healthy life. No reason to throw it away to be hurt the rest of your career and to be hurt. That's all I'm going to say. I think this is too high for Tua. I actually have Daniel Jones ahead of him just because I think he's going to play more, and I have all the wideouts that are left of the board ahead of it as well.
I don't agree with Daniel Jones being ahead, but I agree with most of what you're saying, as we've talked about before. And I'll add to this, not only does the NFL hope that this guy eventually stops playing, because they're worried. Believe me, they're worried.
They hope he stops playing for his health, not for any
For
other
his
reason.
health.
Yeah.
But this
Correct.
could end the league, though.
But
if he
even-
dies from this, it could end the league.
Even Tua Tagovailoa himself said that this offseason that he contemplated retirement. One more concussion, and this guy's going to retire. This is why I think that this is a big, huge risk. As far as Ryan taking a quarterback that he loves in this situation, I have no problem with the process, other than I don't think Ryan is taking into consideration all the health concerns around Tua at this point. But I still think that this isn't a crazy spot to take Tua, even though I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's a crazy spot.
I think one more concussion. There may be like a buyout deal with it.
The NFL may make him quit.
Like, hey, I'll give you a bunch of money. Just please don't ruin this.
I agree. I personally, even if Tua was 100% healthy, I couldn't take him over A.J. Brown. Probably not Jalen Waddle, but maybe. But because of all the concerns, I don't like the pick because of those reasons. Ryan's process, I don't have a problem with.
I hope I'm wrong too. I really hope I'm wrong.
Sure,
I hope he plays the next 40 years and Ryan can yell at me for the next every time about it.
Nothing. I'm not rooting against the kid at all. It's just
I'm
actually rooting for it.
Yeah,
a lot of us were having that same fear when Devontae Adams was having all those concussions as well.
And we were, and the NFL wasn't concerned about it like they are.
They weren't these kind of concussions. These aren't like
it's different than
4
weeks. 7 years ago. It's such a different landscape.
The NFL's taking concussions a lot more seriously now.
Exactly. That's why the landscape's different. And on top of that, correct me if I'm wrong, did anyone ever hear Devontae Adams said he contemplated retirement?
No.
I mean, you heard it right out of the players'
I also never saw Devontae Adams look like I saw Tua look at that game, where his hand was like doing some stuff, man. That was visibly the most scary thing besides what we saw
with DeMar Hamlin.
But
I have not been a Tua fan as far as the player, not the person. The person, he's a great guy. I've very few times have I been as physically upset as I was when I saw that last hit on him.
His hands did some things that weren't supposed to do.
It didn't look good.
He didn't play for like 4 weeks after that for a reason. I can't take him as a fan, as a dynasty thing.
Yeah, I have Tua as my quarterback 12, same as Ryan does. I don't hate the pick. I'm a little bit more confident in him playing than Jorge is. I think he plays. I think he plays a while. I think they're going to take the concussions into consideration. They're going to do everything they can to continue to beef up their line and continue to keep getting the ball out of his hands faster than what they have been. Because recently it's been he drops back, he waits for the field to open up. I think it's going to be a lot more of screens behind the line of scrimmage and faster throws in order to get the ball out of his hands a lot faster. And he's got 2 wide receivers to be able to do that with, to where they can just burn past everybody.
So now we're moving on to the 210, and Team Vision sent the 210, the 503, and the 903 to Team Flash, which is Tyler, for 309, the 404, and the 804. So let's talk about the trade real quick, not the player. Moved back a whole round to move up
a whole
round in the 5th.
A whole 2 rounds, yeah.
And also moved up a whole round from the 8th to the 9th.
It's a pretty fair trade if you don't like this.
It is pretty fair, but I just think that there was a player that was clearly better than – there's a player that should have been taking a few picks.
There's at least a tier break.
Yeah. So I really feel like that Tyler got a good deal here. Does anybody else have any insight on this trade before we talk about the player selected?
If you have conviction, this is a perfectly reasonable move up. And
it's a good move up.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it's a good move back.
You moved up 2 rounds later on,
but there's at least one tier break. There's at least one player on the board that is an elite player in fantasy.
I disagree with. I think that the next 3 guys next 3 wideouts are all very similar.
But that's all in the same tier break.
Sure,
in the same.
He's
tier.
a different level guy.
Well, he's not going to be picking till 309 here. I definitely think he's trading out of a tier for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think he picked up enough. Is what I'm saying.
Sounds like we're split on the trade, and that's fine. Me and Luigi don't really like it as much, and Ryan and Jorge.
I think if you're going to try to
win, if you're trading up for. Trading up, I like the trade for.
So you're with me and Luigi, basically.
Yes.
I don't think it's enough because I think the guy is so good, but it's not like a terrible. If you want to get more value, that's fine. Okay. It is a start 12. You're picking up an extra pick.
So after trading up, Team Flash took A.J. Brown to add to Joe Burrow, and
I think this is like the most ridiculously.
I mean, A.J. Brown's my wide receiver 3, so
he's my wide receiver 4, but he was easily the highest rated guy on the board for me.
This isn't really.
I had him at all the way at pick number 14. We are currently sitting at pick 22. So this was at least 8 spots of value, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tyler knew exactly who he was trading up for here, and
yeah.
especially considering what, in my opinion, little he gave up. I think this was a great pick.
As opposed to the Allen pick, whenever I saw that Tyler did make this trade up, I knew he was going to take AJ Brown. I was upset because that's who I wanted to get the next pick. I was really hoping AJ Brown would fall to me at the next pick. So yeah, I think this is just clearly the best player.
When you saw the trade, you're like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah,
Right.
that's just, I'm not getting AJ Brown now. That's it.
Well, Jorge, you're on up at 2-11 with Team Nightwing. Patrick Mahomes is already on the squad. Amon-Ra St. Brown was your pick. Let's hear the reasoning. I think it's pretty straightforward, but let's hear it.
I think he's the best player available at this point in time. I have him ahead of Waddle. I have him ahead of Daniel Jones. And while I do have Daniel Jones a little higher than most people in this room, I do think Daniel Jones is replaceable. Amon-Ra St. Brown's not replaceable. I'm not going to. I don't draft again for quite a while. I'm not getting a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can't pass this guy.
You drafted again in 4 picks, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm going to be brief here. He was my next. He is also my wide receiver 5.
Yep.
This was, in my opinion, absolutely the best guy on the board. Only one guy would have even considered taking over him.
He's actually my wide receiver 6. I have AJ Brown at 3. Jalen Waddle is at 4, which he's still on the board, so that's clearly who I would take. I have CeeDee Lamb at 5, and Amon-Ra's at 6. I'm fine. Like I have them all tiered together. Like I feel like they're all in the same tier. But I definitely would take Waddle here.
Also, the only other thing I would like to say is, with a little bit of tiebreaker, I don't think Waddle and St. Brown are very different. Is I actually have Jared Goff higher up than most people do in my QB rankings, and the fact that I probably will end up with Jared Goff because I'll probably try to get to a point where I can get him before he goes off the board. I like to have that stack of quarterback and wide receiver there too. So I can't get to him. So
that's fair.
Okay, y'all ready to talk about a trade?
Let's do it.
Okay, so Team Flash was on the board, and Team Flash sent the 212, the 909, and the 1109 to Team Galactus for the 305, the 705, and the 1008. And I got to say that I love this trade for Team Flash. There are several guys left, I feel like, in this tier. He moved up a full round from the 70 or the 909 to the 705. He did go down 7 spots, and he could have probably got eliminated from the tier, but things would have had to really go against him, in my opinion. He picked up some of the value that he gave away in the A.J. Brown trade, so you could make the argument he didn't really lose any value on the A.J. Brown trade because of this trade.
So I just want to clarify. He moved up 2 rounds to go from the 909 to the 705. I just wanted to make that clear.
What did I say?
You said 1 round.
So 2 rounds. So
even better.
Actually, 1 round would have been enough. So yeah, two rounds was better. He also got another move up, didn't he?
Yeah, he got another round move up.
He moved
from 11 to
11 to 10, which seems less, but I'm gonna tell you, we're sitting right now currently in about the 8th round, and that pick that's gonna look like a gap when we get to the 10.
Well, this is we've said this multiple times. This is start 12 to move up from the 11 to the 10. It does make a little bit of a difference. Yeah. So I agree with you. I do like the value. I like it a lot more than what Vision received just a couple picks earlier. And the player that Galactus ends up taking, I'm not going to name him because I got in trouble last time. I think that that's the player that you needed to move up for.
Well, I
disagree.
We'll get to that, but I was going to argue exactly the opposite. If you're going to move up and give up 2 runs of value from the 9th to the 7th, or not value, but a 2-round move up, you need to take the best player on the board, in my opinion. And in my opinion, he clearly didn't take the best player on the board.
So we're kind of on like it's kind of like a common theme for him then. He still technically could take the guy who I think is the best player on the board, who would actually been the best tight end on the board, and that's Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. Well, so what he did after he made this trade up is with the 212, took Daniel Jones. So and he adds that to currently he has Justin Herbert, Dalton Kincaid, and now Daniel Jones. And I did say that I don't think this was the right pick, but I do understand the philosophy. This is his quarterback one on the board. He wanted to get left on the board. He wanted to get a quarterback before he picked again, which was kind of far down, if I'm not mistaken.
I will say after Jones, I do think there is a tier another tier break. I think Daniel Jones is kind of a tier of himself.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
But to me, like we've said, Pitts and Waddle are both worth a decent amount more than Jones. So I personally
it just feels like he's kind of bled value out with these last two picks.
I just personally couldn't have taken Jones over Waddle or Pitts, but different strokes for different folks.
Absolutely. That's why we draft them out.
Any more thoughts on this pick, guys?
I think there's just other quarterbacks you could have taken to get this up for this. It's not. Jones.
You mean later on?
Later on.
Okay.
Yeah,
if he's going to move up, this is the right guy.
Yeah.
For a quarterback.
It's the quarterback to move up.
He to me, he is a tier of his own, and
but
because he's the only one that is to me, he's the only one left that's production with still a young. So like,
I disagree with that a little bit.
I think Kirk Cousins is the guy in the tier by himself. I think Daniel Jones is right behind Tua for me. It's really. I know you have Jones ahead.
I have him a large amount behind Tua, but you know how I feel about that.
Luigi, any closing thoughts on this?
No, I said what I wanted to say.
Guys, with that being said, we're going to choose for this to be the end of the first part of this. So if you've enjoyed what you've heard, if you've stayed through the end of it, pick up the second part of this and we'll get started with the third round here.